Welcome to the docks of 10th century Dublin, a city built on silver, swords, and the screams of the enslaved. Today we're going to uncover how Viking Dublin became Europe's most notorious slave market, why Irish and Spanish women were the most valuable cargo, and how an Irish king's quest for power finally ended this brutal slave market. When the Vikings first arrived between 793 to 840, they quickly took full advantages of the unprotected monastic settlements around the coastal areas, burning them and looting them and taking back the goods back to Norway. They also got fully involved with the fighting that was going on between the Ian dynasty. The Ian dynasty at the time were having a conflict over if they should keep to the old decentralized ways or if they should centralize under one king and government. This of course benefited the Vikings that were quickly immigrating into the country, joining up as mercenaries, fighting on one side or the other, the northern Ineal versus the southern Ineal. At the same time, the men of Luclin, the kingdom of Luclin, also launched an invasion around 836. However, this was quickly beaten back by both the Ullid and the men of the Ineal. However, Ivor the Boneless, who had settled in Dublin around 840, was much more successful in England, capturing many Saxon prisoners and bringing them back to sell in the streets of Dublin. Dublin would continue to become a success as they would continue to mount raids both in England and take back prisoners with the continued civil fighting between the various Irish kings in Ireland. Slavery had become a huge business for the Hiberno-Scandinavians, Gaelic and Scandinavian men that had settled in Dublin, Waterford, Limerick and Cork and would go out to commit piracy, or Viking as they would call it at the time. In 917, the Hiberno-Scandinavian warlord Sitric Emer recaptured Dublin, transforming into a fortress of the Hiberno-Scandinavian Vikings, who had made Ireland their home over the last 100 years. From here, they ruled the Irish seas, launching raids through all of Western Europe. But their true power came from a much more darker trade: slavery. Dublin's docks teemed with captured Irish farmers, Welsh princes, and Spanish monks. But their most sought after goods were women. Why? They could be sold as domestic labour, forced marriage, and shipped abroad to markets as far as Baghdad. Dublin wasn't just a city, it was a factory of human misery. Archaeologists have found slave trades buried beneath Viking Dublin. The Annals of Ulster have a chilling record of Viking attacks that happened throughout the period, with many people forced back to Dublin. Archaeologists even today are shocked at the finds that they discover beneath the streets of Ireland. Imagine the scene: a young woman ripped from their home in Connacht or even Spain, Galatia, then paraded through the streets of Dublin. Buyers inspect their teeth, how strong they are, and even their youth. The lucky ones become concubines for a fine noble. The rest shipped off to icy lands in Iceland and Greenland, or even off to the Arab markets far away from their homes that they'll never see again. Irish laws at the time, like Brehon law, called slaves cumil. Like female captives, their value, 3 cumil, was equal to 1 cow. Women weren't just victims, they were currency in Ireland. The saga admits to Vikings carrying off countless amount of women throughout Ireland and all of Western Europe. Even Islamic travellers meeting in Volga, writing in 922, write of the slave girls from the lands of the Franks and of Ireland. In the 9th century, we have recordings from both Sweden and Denmark of these huge Viking armadas coming from both Sweden and Denmark, making their way around and into Iberia, modern day Spain and Portugal, and raiding those areas, taking a large amount of loot and, of course, a whole load of women with them, back to both Sweden and Denmark. The Dublin Vikings, going into the 10th century, must have seen Iberia as the perfect little site for them to go in and take what they want, in particular for the markets of Dublin. It's from the 10th century onwards, the majority of the raids happening in Iberia are organised in Dublin city. From there, groups of Norse and Danish men will meet up and join the warbands of the Gaelic and the Scandinavians, and of course the Hiberno-Scandinavians that lived in Dublin and organised by the Dublin king, where they would launch out and attack various key spots of Iberia, modern day Spain and Portugal. In 968 AD, the Hiberno-Scandinavian warlord Gundador led 100 ships to Galatia, Spain. His target, Santiago de Compostela, a holy city packed with pilgrims and, of course, unprotected women. Plenty of claims came in that these Hiberno-Scandinavians were even butchering bishops and carried off sacred treasures, and of course the many captured women. But why Spain? Silver? Islamic coins flooded Dublin markets, but the Vikings also wanted slaves, Iberian women, who were very exotic and would have cost an absolute fortune to be shipped all the way to Dublin to be sold into the northern markets of both Northern Europe and Britain and Ireland. Even after the death of Gundor, their holds stuffed with human cargo. A charter signed 30 years after Gundor's raid described the fortress of the Norse in Uli River. Proof Vikings' terror lingered in Spain for many, many years. By 1103, the new King of Ireland, Murtig Iberian, faced a problem. The Pope saw Ireland as barbaric. To win Rome's favour, he banned slavery at the Synod of Cashel, declaring no Christian shall be enslaved. But of course this wasn't just piety, it was political, with Viking power broken in Clontarf. The Iberian needed church support to rule. The slave market, once Dublin's lifeblood, was sacrificed for his crown. The annals of Inishfallen confirm Iberian's law, while today Galatia still holds a massive Viking festival where children today can be seen laughing and playing with toy swords, and couples reenact these special occasions together. But Dublin's slave trades are still on display in its museum today to remind us where women were traded like cattle. The Viking Age just wasn't battles and longships, it was a war of human dignity. History isn't about kings and conquest, it's about voices of the forgotten. If you want to know more about the untold stories about medieval Ireland, definitely hit me up on the subscribe. And also, if you didn't know, I'm actually covering a good few classes all the way up to July 5th. So if you're into Viking Age Ireland, jump over to my Patreon, where if you've missed a few classes, that's absolutely no problem, as I've recorded a ton of them on my Patreon, so it's easy to catch up. On top of that, the classes are on every Sunday. If you're living in Ireland and America, that's Sunday evening. So definitely jump on over on Patreon if you're interested, not just in Viking Age Ireland, also many other classes to do with medieval Ireland as a whole. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed that, and all the best. Slán go bhaile.